Hi there, I'm Jeremy Krug, and welcome back to AP Chemistry. We are in Unit 3, Section 8. In this second part of that section, we're going to learn about how compounds react and how they behave when they are dissolved in water. Now, we want to spend quite a bit of time on solutions here because usually when we carry out a reaction in the laboratory, it's going to be in solution. That's how we carry out a whole lot of reactions in the lab. And that's just because substances tend to react more readily when they're in solution. As a result, we have a special word, a vocabulary word here, that talks about what it means to be dissolved into water. The word aqueous specifically means a substance that has been dissolved into water. Aqua, of course, that means water, doesn't it? So we're talking about substances that are dissolved into water. If you see an AQ in parentheses written after a substance, that means that substance has been dissolved in water. And we'll see that as we start writing these equations here later on. Now, just an example of that before we jump into that in a later lesson. If you have salt, just regular sodium chloride in its solid form, you'd write it as NaCl with this little S in parentheses to represent that it's a solid. Once you dissolve it into water, though, well, it actually becomes NaCl aqueous. You put the AQ in parentheses to show that it's been dissolved in water. But that's not it. Something else happens as well. Since this is an ionic compound and it is dissolving in water, it's going to do something else. It's actually going to break apart or dissociate into its component ions. And so what you're really going to have will be sodium ions that are aqueous and chloride ions that are aqueous. And so we're going to learn how to write these in aqueous ionic form. You know, ionic compounds, that means something that has a metal and a nonmetal, cation and anion, they are strong electrolytes. So what that means is when they dissolve in water, they dissociate completely into their component ions, just like we see here in the case of sodium ions and chloride ions. And we call them strong electrolytes because this solution right here is going to conduct electricity very strongly. The presence of those charged particles will allow electrons to flow quite freely, allowing it to conduct electricity. And we can actually test that very easily in the lab using a simple battery and a conductivity tester. Now, normally, when we talk about ionic compounds dissolving, this happens when you have, usually it's water, but it could be some other polar molecule as well, actually surround the ion and literally pulls it away from the ionic crystal lattice. And so here's a picture or a cartoon, I suppose you could say, of what's happening here. So let's imagine that we have a salt crystal. So here's sodium chloride once again. And we know that sodium ions, those are positive, they tend to be smaller than negative ions. And so the sodium ions would be these little purple spheres here, and the chloride ions, which are negative, would be those somewhat larger green spheres. So let's imagine that we have a couple of water molecules. I'm sure there are more than just two, but we're just going to focus on these two. And how is it going to behave around that sodium ion right there? Well, it's positively charged, and so that means that the negative poles of the water will surround that sodium ion and will literally pull it away into solution. And that's how water can dissolve an ionic compound. Now, the same thing happens with the anions. Imagine that we have this chloride ion right here, and we're going to focus on two water molecules over here. This time, it's the positive poles. So notice it's the positive poles of water that will surround that chloride ion right there. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to literally pull those ions off into solution. Now, this force is something we call an ion-dipole force. Hopefully for fairly obvious reasons at this point. We have an ion that's being attracted to a dipole or to a polar molecule. Now this only happens if the ion-dipole force is stronger than the force that holds the ion together in the ionic compound. And that's why some ionic compounds don't dissolve in water, because their ionic force is so strong. Well, that ion-dipole force, even that, is not enough to pull them away. So in salt, yeah, this ion-dipole force is much stronger than the force that's holding the sodium and the chloride ions together. Now, when we get into writing chemical equations, which we're going to be doing quite a bit in Unit 4, we want to get in the habit of writing soluble ionic compounds in ionic form. So what that means is, for example, if you have zinc nitrate and it's dissolved into water, you don't write it like this, you write it in its ion form. Zn2 plus aqueous plus 2 nitrate ions aqueous. Notice it's 2 nitrates because there's that little 2 right there that shows that we had 2 nitrates present. Or if we have sodium sulfide, you'd write it as 2 sodium ions, and it's 2 because of that little subscript 2 right there, along with a sulfide 2 negative ion. How about lead 2 acetate? Well, lead 2 ion, and this time it's 2 acetate ions. I'm leaving off the aqueous in parentheses just for brevity's sake, but normally you would put that in there as well. Magnesium fluoride. You'd write that as a magnesium 2 plus ion along with 2 fluoride ions, just like that. Now, if you were to stumble across a compound that is insoluble, one that does not dissolve in water, like calcium phosphate, well, if it's insoluble, then it can't dissolve, of course, and it can't break apart into its ions. And so you would just write it as its normal ionic compound form. Now, perhaps the question is, how do you know if a compound is soluble like the first 4 were, or insoluble like the last one? Well, in the next unit, Unit 4, we're actually going to learn some rules that will help us to predict if something is soluble or not. So stay tuned for that as we move forward to Unit 4. But for right now, we're not going to worry too much about that. Now, there are some other compounds that should be written in ionic form in aqueous solution. Strong acids. Now, we're going to spend a lot of time on acids once we get to Unit 8 of this course. But for right now, we're going to talk about the fact that there are 6 strong acids. And these are the 6 strong acids that you need to know for AP Chemistry. Hydrochloric acid, hydrobromic acid, hydroiodic acid, nitric acid, sulfuric acid, and perchloric acid. And these are the only 6 acids that will dissociate completely into their ions when they're in aqueous solution. So in each case of these 6, they would be written in ion form, just like you see in these examples. That's how you would write them. Every other acid, and there are hundreds if not thousands or more acids out there, every other acid is going to be written in its compound form because it's not going to dissociate very much. All other acids are what we call weak electrolytes. They just don't ionize very much. Now, we talked about strong acids. How about bases? Well, strong bases are also strong electrolytes, and they will dissociate completely as well. They're going to break apart into their ion form. Once again, there aren't that many strong bases out there. There are only 8, and here they are. And for the most part, they are, if you look at the formulas here, you'll see that these are essentially the group 1 and group 2 hydroxides. Lithium hydroxide, sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, rubidium hydroxide, cesium hydroxide, calcium hydroxide, strontium hydroxide, and barium hydroxide. And notice in each case, since these are the strong bases, they're going to dissociate completely. They break apart into their component ions. Notice in these last three here you have two hydroxides, so you have to reflect that whenever you write the ion form. Now, some folks might be asking about francium hydroxide. It's extremely rare, and it honestly doesn't exist. If it did exist, it would be a strong base as well, as far as I can tell. Some folks might be looking at some of these other hydroxides and be asking about some of the others. In one case, it's radioactive and doesn't really exist. Beryllium hydroxide is not really soluble, and magnesium hydroxide really isn't that soluble either. So for our purposes, these are your 8 strong bases. All other bases that you're going to encounter, all other hydroxides, all other bases are weak electrolytes and honestly do not ionize very much. Now, most weak bases that you're going to encounter in AP chemistry are going to have nitrogen and hydrogen in them. And we'll see that once we get to the acid-base unit in Unit 8. But for right now, if you see a compound that has nitrogen and hydrogen, like ammonia or hydrazine or methylamine in this case, those all have N and H. So those are, that's a good tip-off that these are weak bases. And we'll talk more about what that means and how they behave in solution later on in this course. Now, all other molecular compounds, including water, are what we call non-electrolytes. And they honestly do not ionize much at all. In fact, they honestly do not ionize. So things like sugar or dinitrogen tetroxide or methane, these hydrocarbons, or glucose. All those compounds, especially hydrocarbons, anything that's organic, those are non-electrolytes, and we're not going to expect a whole lot, in fact, really any ionization out of those. Water, we'll talk about that here in the acid-base section quite a bit. Carbon dioxide, these are things that just really do not ionize. Now, the reason that we're talking about this is that strong electrolytes conduct electricity very well when you dissolve them in water. So take an ionic compound, take a strong acid, take a strong base, dissolve it into water. You can pass a current of electricity through that very easily. And that's because you have all these ions swimming around, and those charged particles give a nice conduit for those electrons to pass through. On the other hand, weak electrolytes, weak acids, weak bases, and non-electrolytes, all these here, they do not conduct electricity at all. Hope you learned something about how substances behave when they're dissolved in water, about electrolytes and weak electrolytes and non-electrolytes. If you learned something, please hit that thumbs up button. That really does help the algorithm. And join me in my next video where we're going to move on to Unit 3, Section 9. Thanks for watching.